Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating psychological phenomenon, that profound, almost magnetic comfort so many of us find in sad music and movies. We're going to look at the actual science behind why our brains actively seek out what looks like emotional pain, and how it's actually this incredibly sophisticated mechanism for healing and building emotional resilience.
So, why reach for heartbreak? Seriously, have you ever noticed how some people, and hey, maybe this is you, instinctively reach for the saddest song or the most devastating movie when they're already feeling totally down? Picture this. You've had a truly awful day. You're exhausted. Maybe you're on the absolute verge of tears. And instead of throwing on a comedy or some upbeat pop anthem to pull yourself out of the funk, you just instinctively blast a heartbreaking breakup ballad. You literally let the melancholy wash right over you. Now, on the surface, queuing up heartbreak when your mood is already at rock bottom makes absolutely zero sense. So, why do we actually do this?
That brings us to Section 1, the sadness paradox.
Now, for a lot of us, there's this deep internal fear that this habit means we're somehow broken. We worry we're just being overly dramatic, or that we secretly just love making things worse for ourselves. Well, actually, scratch that. That is the great myth right there, that you're just wallowing or dwelling on the negative. Sure, it kind of looks like self-sabotage, right? But the psychological reality completely reframes this super relatable habit. Your brain isn't sabotaging you. It's using sad media as a highly sophisticated tool for emotional regulation. You're not making things worse at all. Your brain is actually protecting you.
It really all comes down to finding peace in the pain. Your brain is essentially executing this incredibly complex healing strategy behind the scenes. Just think about that deep, cleansing sigh of relief you get after a really good cry over a completely fictional story. It feels so much safer to weep over a fake character's tragic loss than it does to directly face the messy, overwhelming grief in your own actual life. It's not because your wires are crossed or anything, it's because your mind is brilliantly leveraging these stories to make sense of your own internal world.
Moving on to Section 2, releasing built-up emotional tension.
So this brings us to a very specific psychological mechanism, which is especially true if you're a highly aware person who processes melodies and stories on a really deep level. The key term you need to know here is emotional contagion. Basically, this is the act of absorbing the emotions behind a melody or a story rather than just passively observing them from a distance. Highly aware people don't just hear a sad chord progression, they physically and mentally absorb its energy. You can literally feel it vibrating in your chest. If you're feeling tense, numb, or just kind of disconnected in your real life, your brain instinctively searches your environment for an emotional match to sort of jumpstart its own processing. And when your brain finally finds that match in a sad song, well, your body reacts to that energy. It acts like a key turning in a locked door. It finally allows your body to release this profound, built-up tension that you might have been keeping totally quiet just to stay safe and functioning in your daily life. It's that amazing moment when the music swells and you finally exhale that heavy, emotional breath you honestly didn't even realize you were holding.
Section 3, simulating real-world pain. And this brilliantly illustrates our next concept.
See, your brain isn't just reacting to your current state. It's constantly, actively preparing for uncertainty. We'd call this mental simulation. Think about how universally common it is to imagine fixed scenarios in your head. Maybe you construct these elaborate winning arguments in the shower, or you imagine wild worst-case scenarios on a long drive just to feel somehow in control of future events. Well, watching a sad movie or listening to a tragic ballad serves the exact same purpose. It allows you to essentially rehearse difficult emotions, but safely, in a completely controlled environment. Your brain is always trying to stay one step ahead of real-world pain. By replaying these heavy emotional possibilities through art, you are basically stress-testing your own emotional responses. It's a psychological rehearsal. And strangely enough, playing out these fake scenarios and experiencing that simulated tragedy actually makes you feel way more prepared, way more grounded, and significantly less stressed about the very real, very unpredictable uncertainty of your actual life. Section 4, validating your hidden feelings.
Let's take a breath here and look at something a little more tender. Sad media does something incredibly powerful. It bridges emotional gaps. And a lot of us have these gaps. They often stem from really common yet deeply painful past experiences. If you grew up in a situation where your emotions were ignored or brushed aside, or if you've ever felt, replaceable in your relationships, you likely learned a core survival mechanism early on. You learned to hide your needs to avoid being a burden to anyone else. But here's the thing. Those ignored emotions, they don't just disappear into the void. They stay right there with you, creating this intense, burning need to finally be seen, to be heard, and to be understood.
So the crucial point is, these melancholy songs and tragic movies become a real sanctuary. You aren't just passively watching a story unfold on a screen, or just listening to a singer complain about a bad breakup. You're actively connecting with a version of reality where your pain is finally validated. When that singer screams out the exact frustration you have been swallowing for years, it gives you this immediate, profound relief from the incredibly heavy burden of feeling chronically misunderstood.
Now this brings us to a really interesting form of rumination, one that actually leads to true insight. People who tend to overthink often revisit painful moments, not because they enjoy suffering, obviously, but because they are desperately trying to find hidden meaning and clarity. And the brain follows this brilliant little sequence to achieve it. First, you engage with the sad art. Second, your brain naturally zooms right in on the intricate details of the character's struggle, like a lingering camera shot or a super specific lyric, using it as a direct mirror for your own life. And third, it takes your own messy emotional short circuit and transforms it into a clear, structured pattern that your conscious mind can finally handle and process. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Taking Back Emotional Control.
This all builds into an absolutely incredible crescendo of personal empowerment. This is where this coping mechanism really flexes its muscles. Because, let's face it, real life is inherently unpredictable, chaotic, and just incredibly messy. Deep, overwhelming emotions are so often forced upon us without our consent, completely knocking us off our feet. But sad media, a movie or an album, has a clearly defined beginning, a middle, and an end. Choosing to engage with sadness entirely on your own terms completely restores your sense of autonomy. You are deciding exactly when, where, and how to feel deeply, rather than just having those feelings imposed on you by a totally chaotic world.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how, by intentionally choosing sad media, you are actively constructing what we call a buffer zone. This is a created space of internal stability. Think of it as a designated time and physical space. Maybe it's your bedroom late at night, or sitting in your car parked in the driveway, where you can just drop all your armor, completely let your guard down, and regain your emotional balance. You get to process your feelings entirely at your own pace, safely removed from the immediate, exhausting demands of reality.
If you're recognizing yourself in any of the behaviors we've talked about today, I really want you to take this away. Your instinct to reach for sad media is absolutely not a weakness. It is not you being dramatic, and it's certainly not you being broken. It is actually a sign of deep emotional resilience and profound psychological insight. Your past experiences might totally explain why you feel things with such intensity. But this specific coping mechanism, it proves that you know exactly how to navigate those feelings to keep yourself afloat.
It all comes down to this one core truth. Your ability to use art to heal shows just how strong your mind really is. Let me say that again. Your ability to use art to heal shows just how strong your mind really is. Your brain isn't broken for loving a tragic film or a heartbreaking song. No way. It is highly capable, immensely sophisticated, and endlessly working behind the scenes to keep you emotionally regulated, balanced, and safe. So, the very next time you instinctively hit play on that Melankoli playlist, I want you to ask yourself, what is your favorite sad song actually trying to help you process? Understanding these hidden patterns allows you to see yourself and the art you love in a completely new and empowering way. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. And remember, keep asking the right questions.
Subscribe to Brain Logic, like this video to support deep psychological insights, and comment your opinion below. We value your unique perspective.